class, I wanted to use the sample attribution assignment as a review session here to answer some questions some of you may have had. I think this is an important skill, potentially for some people within the investment industry. It's basically a way we look at dissecting the returns. Apologies, I'm in the airport, so there will be some background noise if we hear that now. I'll do my best to talk over it while reviewing this. So the first page here, we see the sample attribution report. Going from left to right, we have the fund weight, which is how much of a percent of the fund we're looking at is in a certain area of the market, like energy, industrials, tech, etc. Then we have the index weight. The index weight is where we see how much our benchmark holds of that stuff. I might have shared with you guys before. I try to manage my money close to the index weight of the sector weights. It helps keep certain risk measures in line. Then you have the relative weight, which is the difference between those two. Then you have the fund return and the index return on as a whole, as well as on the individual sector components. So we can see here, the fund had a higher weight in natural resources, but a lower return. So I can look at that right away and know that's going to be a negative contribution. And we're jumping ahead here, but the negative contribution number you see here on the right is showing, what that is as a measure. And that would be 33 basis points. The noise seems to have stopped the screen. Next, we have the relative return. And we see here, you're looking at natural resources. The relative return is a negative 7.1. And what it's saying here is that theoretically, right, if we were just neutral on our stock selection, we should have done better, right? Because natural resources did well. We just picked the wrong stocks. Negative 44 basis points of negative alpha. The sector weight helped us, but the bad stocks we picked within that grouping hurt us for a total of negative 33 basis points. Let's take a look. And you can also see for the problem two, all the weights and formulas are right here. So all you'll need to do on problem two is really just copy that forward. Let's look at the biggest positive contributor. If you were like defining the fund, like, hey, why did it do so well? Well, they benefited from a positive sector weight. They had a 14% return against our 14% weight versus the index. And the fund return was 21% versus the index return of 13.2. So this benefited from both an overweight to industrials, but in particular, the stock selection within that overweight. That's how we would define that. Let's move forward to problem one. All this stuff can be copied and pasted in the relative return, fund return minus index return. Let's just copy it over. Copy. Paste. And just make sure it's pulling from the same spot. Great. Next. See what we have here. Stock selection. Stock selection, I can copy that part over. Next. You know what? We can go through and just copy both these at the same time. And then we have a little Excel magic here. We go across and we just pull all those formulas down. From here, we probably want to gather these numbers as well. Those should be given the returns, and they are. So we're going to pull from the relative return on We're going to copy that, paste, and you can click into these to see what the individual formulas are. So we can see here in the sample problem one, that it was a negative 74 basis point contribution, or underperformed by 0.74%. Let's see question one. What is the fund's relative weight in the financial sector? Financials. Boom. 5.9. Answer to question one. What is the fund's largest overweight, underweight? Sorry, I lied. I didn't pull in the relative weight yet, so scratch that, guys. I missed that part of the formula. Back here, relative weight. Gonna pull that down all the way here. It should pull it in perfectly. So the relative weight of financials is negative 3.9. We're underweight the benchmark. So that's the answer to question one. What's the largest overweight? Largest overweight is, open this up. Largest overweight is consumer staples. That's showing the fund has more of a conservative or defensive posture. So overweight staples, that's defensive. So that's something you could pull from, just kind of reading the numbers and understanding what they mean. Staples are things you buy like toilet paper, right? You buy that, it doesn't matter your financial situation, doesn't change. You're not adjusting your paper towel or toilet paper usage. But a new iPhone or a trip to Walt Disney could be in the a more discretionary or part of the portfolio. But here they're showing defensive. This is like Walmart, cereal companies, General Mills. Number three, where was the fund's relative stock selection the strongest? Stock selection right here. Strongest appears to be in consumer discretionary. So we see that the stock selection is strongest there. And then the weakest stock selection is actually from Staples. So they had a huge overweight in Staples here, and they actually got the underlying names wrong. You can see here that they were right on their call of Staples. It added 80 basis points, that overweight, but the negative stock selection here, mostly zeroed that out. Where did the stock selection have the largest positive impact, negative impact? We just covered that. What was the contribution of the sector weight in the industrial sector? So industrials, that's the total. So we're looking at 33. They had some bad stock selection, but their overweight to industrials still helped them more than their bad stock selection in that sector. Explain the breakdown of the total contribution of staples to performance. We already talked about that, right? One kind of netted the other out. Their overweight, which would have been a positive, was offset by bad stock selection. Explain the breakdown of total contribution to consumer discretionary. Consumer discretionary benefited from, now I'm looking at it, it's an overweight. They benefited from an overweight as well as positive stock selection within the discretionary space. So that was kind of like a double win there, right? Their overweight helped. Again, how do I read that? 10.7 greater than 8.9. And their stock selection helped. When we look at that, fund weight multiplied by the relative return. So that's what we're getting from the stock selection. I won't do the same thing here because this is just more of the same. Hopefully, this is just on a country basis instead of a sector basis, but the interpretation is identical. If you have any additional questions, please let me know.